All right. Well, hello, everyone. I am very excited to have Melissa with me today. She is an artist and owner of Phoenix Supply Company, and she has a whole nother company as well on top of that. So she has a lot of fun information to share with us today. So grateful for her. So thanks, Melissa. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So give us a little bit of information about your businesses, what you do with each of them, and then we'll just kind of jump into your story a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Well, as you said, I run Phoenix Supply Co., which is an art and paper goods company that celebrates the Southwest. So all of our products tend to be Southwest themed and just, well, celebrate the Southwest. But prior to that, I actually founded a design studio. I think it's I actually founded it probably 18 years ago, but I've been operating it as my full-time job for 8, I believe. Starting to lose track. But that's a boutique design studio. We do brand development and website design, marketing collateral, things like that for our clients. So that's kind of my full main gig. And then Phoenix Supply Co. is like my passion business that I kind of operate on the side and in the margins of the rest of my life.
I know you have so much going on. I'm so impressed with how much you're able to juggle and make that happen. So tell us a little bit about your story. At what point did you decide that being self-employed, owning your own companies was a good fit for you? How did that all come together?
Sure, yeah. So let's see. Um, when you're a designer, freelancing is like a very common thing. So I think I even had freelance gigs like in my last year of school or like as I was graduating. So I was introduced to this idea of freelance pretty early on, but I didn't really entertain it as like I could ever just work for myself right away. I worked at a job for a nonprofit for a couple of years. Then I moved out here to Arizona and worked at another job. And as I'm doing this, I'm still freelancing and my freelance is growing. And that's so maybe like 4 or 5 years into my career is when I started to feel like, wouldn't it be cool to do this freelance work for all of my work? And it wasn't even close to being to the point that it could be sustainable at that point, but it started to be this kind of vision and dream in my mind. So I ended up working at other jobs as a designer for about 10 years before I finally made the jump. And the whole entire time I was freelancing on the side, my freelance was growing. By the time I made the jump, I was actually making more on my freelance than I was in my salary. And so that's when I started to feel like, okay, you know, success is never a given, but I feel like signs are pointing to I could be successful this way because clearly I'm bringing money in and people are hiring me. And you would think that would increase when now all of a sudden my 8 to 5 hours are available to them, you know?
Right.
And I'd kind of been intentionally keeping my rates lower because I kind of felt like people were making a bit of a concession working with someone who they couldn't access at 2 p.m. So I figured there was potential for increasing my rates, not to mention I'd have all this extra time. I shouldn't say extra time because otherwise I've been working 24 hours a day, but I would theoretically have like the bulk of the day versus the edge of the day to work. And so that's when I really kind of started to think, okay, I think I can make the jump. It was particularly scary because I don't have any family members or anything like that who've ever run a business or been self-employed.
Yeah.
So like my mom and dad are looking at me like, how are you going to pay for health insurance and things like that? And I did eventually have to kind of have what I call a come to Jesus moment with them and be like, guys, pretty sure I'm not going to be happy in life until I at least try this. I may fail, but I feel like I have to try it. So they were actually really cool after having that conversation and really did get more supportive, like trying to like, they'd see an article in a magazine about being self-employed and send it to me and things like trying to like find solutions to the problems rather than pointing out the problems. So yeah, so that all happened a little over 8 years ago.
Okay, fantastic. And then at what point did your passion with art jump into the picture where you were able to do the Phoenix Supply Co?
So I would say about 5 years ago, I started getting this inkling to want to watercolor paint, but I didn't know how to watercolor paint. And so I took a few like half-hearted stabs at it, failed miserably. And so it probably sat like that for 2 years. Like, hey, this seems like something I would want to do. It seems really relaxing and fun, but I never really focused on it for like 2 years. I didn't make the time. And so about 3 years ago, I decided I'm going to do a 100-day project. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a 100-day project, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You pick a thing you're going to do for 100 days straight. And then you don't have to post it on social media, but it's kind of part of the fun. And it's kind of sometimes keeps you going when you're posting things and you're getting feedback of people being like, oh, this is really cool. Oh, I'm seeing your growth. Have you ever thought to try this? Things like that kind of spur you on, because there's usually, I've done 2 of them now, 200-day projects, and there's about 3 to 4 points in it where you just want to stop. You're just like, I have no more ideas. I have no more time. I can't do this anymore. So, but anyway, I made it through. And that was kind of how I taught myself to watercolor paint. And so out of that, I actually had been doing a little bit of stuff on the side with some foiling of some drawn designs, not painted designs, but it was real hit or miss. I didn't really have any kind of business strategy around it. And so I started realizing I loved painting anything around Arizona, desert, cactus, things like that. And so after kind of operating real haphazardly for maybe a year or a little more, it was last year, so spring of 2019, that I relaunched all of that under the name Phoenix Supply Co. and was like, okay, I want to make this a thing. I want to be serious about it to the degree I can while also maintaining my other business. And I kind of set some goals for myself around like kind of how I wanted that business to dovetail with my other business and the rest of my life. So I got a lot more strategic about it a little over a year and a half ago. So
Perfect. That's so much to take on. I'm just so impressed that you're able to balance the two of these and make that work into your schedule. What training or education would you recommend or say is required for both of those careers that you're doing right now? If there's a teen out there that's really interested in doing something like you, can really relate to you and thinks, man, I would just really love my own business someday and to be able to do these things, what would you recommend?
sure. Okay, so from the design perspective, I went to like a 4-year university for that degree. And I would say that's most designers' path. Mm-hmm. It is possible to be a self-taught designer. Graphic design is not one of those careers that you have to have a degree. What you have to have is an amazing portfolio and good people skills and be like kind of to some degree savvy about business, because your clients, while they do want something amazing and beautiful, they want something amazing and beautiful that actually works for their business, and makes financial sense to invest in, helps them make more money after they've invested in it, things like that. So that's ultimately what you need to be successful as a designer in a design business. I would actually also back up and say you need to have the ability to do kind of the administrative side, which most designers who go out on their own, if they fail, that is probably the reason they fail. They haven't developed sales processes, onboarding processes. They haven't developed their ability to kind of serve the customer, talk to the customer, kind of read between the lines, like kind of those social skills, I would say if a design business fails, it's often because of that, at least if you're like a freelancer. So it's entirely possible to be self-taught, but it's rare to be self-taught because it's a ton of work and most people don't have the ability to kind of be that strict with themselves, to like force themselves to practice, to force themselves to take a ton of different practice projects, or maybe do pro bono work for like nonprofits or businesses they care about to like grow their skills. Like you would have to do all the work that you would do in a university, but assign it to yourself essentially in probably a less structured manner. So I recommend going to school just because it gives you this 4-year incubator to be led through learning this and the ability to practice like under constraints and with feedback and things like that. You're not going to be done when you get out of school. Like the primary way to be successful in design is just keep doing it. Do as much as you can. Because every project you get better, you learn more. I'm still learning more, and I've been doing it for 18 years. So, so that's kind of how to get into design and design business. With the art, I feel like art is a much more fluid path. I feel like tons of successful artists are self-taught, but I also feel like the path to success in art is significantly less clear. People get there a million different ways. Some people just literally sell paintings. For me, it's more selling products with my paintings on them. For other people, it's licensing art to other businesses. They print their art on their products. So there's like a ton of different ways to get there, not to mention, you can be represented by a gallery or sell directly to your consumer. Art is extremely dependent on a network and a following, because you need people to be in contact with people who love and resonate with your work and then want to, use their dollars to support that in some way. So very different paths. For me, it's been really interesting because they take totally different skill sets. And so ever since adding this kind of art side, it's really brought out like a different side of me as a person, as a creative, and as a business owner. So
do you feel that Instagram has been your base platform, your most successful platform for marketing yourself online?
Yeah, definitely. Well, for my art, for design, I actually feel like the most powerful thing you can do is have an amazing customer experience, and people will refer you. Because with design, you're talking about investing hundreds or thousands of dollars versus with art, the kind of art I do is more like $20, $30, $40. So that's pretty easy to buy into on Instagram versus I have an Instagram for my design studio. I'm not very good at being consistent about it, but I have yet to really get clients through that means. Granted, maybe if I invested more in it, I would. I'm not sure. But I think it's hard to give someone $2,000 who you have no connection with. It's a lot easier to give somebody that kind of money when your friend worked with them and had an amazing experience. So I would say it's very different. Instagram has been my number one source for the art business. And I'm finding just the more I pour into Instagram, the more it pays me back kind of thing. But with design, it's much more personal relationships.
So what would you say in terms of mentors? Because you were talking about in both of these industries, there are some people that struggle, that are not successful. So they need to learn some basic tools. They need to learn some things. Could they find that success through a mentor or through particular training events? What would you recommend there?
Oh man, there's a ton of things. I would definitely recommend a lot of reading, business books, design books, art books, like depending on your area of interest. But I've definitely done a ton of reading over my day, and that's articles online, that's actual books. They still make some design magazines and things like that. So definitely reading is going to be a good one. And then getting involved in kind of your community, whether it's the design community or the art community, because my experience has been that both of those communities are willing to share. However, they may not necessarily respond to random person on Instagram, like DMing them who they've never had any interaction with. That's a little weird because, whatever information you share, you are kind of sharing like a business secret. But if you have a personal relationship with somebody, they're going to want to see you succeed, and they're probably going to be willing to share with you information about that. I've definitely, like, a massive part of the success of my design and my design business has been this. I live in Phoenix, the Metro Phoenix area in Arizona. We've got a really strong design community here. And I can tell you without a doubt that a huge part of my success has been that community, both, well, in a million ways, in like sharing work with each other, bringing each other into projects and collaborating, but also like helping teach each other and things like that. But then there's also, you know, national conferences and, you know, these higher up designers that you can also follow and learn from, like, online, and they publish books and things like that. For art, same kind of thing. Like, I've learned a lot from just like YouTube tutorials and just watching people with a critical eye on Instagram, like watching what they're doing. What are they posting? Oh, they posted a video of them painting. Wait, how did they just paint that flower petal? Because, you know, like, their brushstroke was different than my brushstroke. Like, just critically examining. And you can form that same kind of community like on Instagram. And I actually have some what I would consider good friends that I really don't hardly know in person, if at all, but they're like my Instagram friends, and we'll chatter back and forth. Oh, where'd you get that printed? Oh, what brand of paint are you using for that? You know, like things like that. And because we've got this ongoing dialogue and supporting of each other, it feels like a friendship, and we're willing to kind of divulge information to each other, because it's not just random stranger who could be perceived as a competitor online. You know, it's like actual person that we're kind of invested in this platform, you know? So Instagram's important, but just also reading and things like that. And if you can find, there's tons of online trainings for both of these things, Skillshare, stuff like that. There's so much training out there. But you just have to be willing to search it out and put the time into it.
Yeah, that's great. So what type of investment are teens looking at in these industries if they're considering starting their own business? They just want to be financially prepared. What do you think that they should do in terms of preparing for that?
Sure. Okay. So this is all assuming you've already got some skills. Because clearly skills, most important thing. Yeah. Gotta have some skills. But in terms of like the investment in like materials and things like that, neither one is that expensive to start. I mean, like, art's super cheap. You know, you just need some paints and paper. Granted, good paper can be a little pricey. More expensive than one would think. Like a good sheet of watercolor paper, like even just for like an 8x10 is like $1 for just one sheet of paper. But practice on less expensive paper. But yeah, so in terms of like the art side, I mean, you might just need a couple $100s of supplies to get started actually painting things, and you could potentially sell those original paintings. Definitely take scans of them, some sort of high resolution digital capture of them, because you may want to make a print or put it on a t-shirt or a mug or something like that in the future. Mm-hmm. Keep everything. There have been things that I have hated, and then I went back and decided I liked, or like took a piece of it or something and put it in something else. So keep everything when it comes to art, but pretty minimal outgo. If you are wanting to get into the development of products, that can be more expensive, because you just basically have to pay for everything up front and then hope and pray you sell it. Mm-hmm. So I definitely recommend starting small, you know, order the smallest quantity you can, see if there's like a local vendor that can just print a couple. Like, I have a local printer who does my mugs, and when I go to an event, I literally just get like 6 printed. I don't have cases and cases of mugs in my garage, because that is a very big, expensive thing. So try to find places that you can kind of do shorter runs of. It makes more work because you're kind of constantly reordering, but that's also like your time you're investing, which technically is money. But I just have to keep telling myself that this is the process you have to go through. You have to grow in these steps, you know, unless I feel comfortable buying $500 worth of mugs and letting them sit there praying people like that mug design, you know, because people will tell you on Instagram they want something, and then you actually make it and no one buys it. It happens all the time. It's extremely frustrating. Or the thing that no one responded to, or that you personally hate, you stick out there and everyone wants it. It makes no sense at all. So definitely kind of be cautious when investing in products. From the design perspective, it really also is not that expensive to get into. It actually might in the long term be cheaper than the art. It's more upfront, but once you've done the upfront, you don't have to keep investing, versus if you're buying products for art, you have to like keep buying products to sell and then waiting till you sell them. But for design, you really just need some sort of, good computer, because processing graphics, it takes a decent amount of like power from the computer. I use Apple products. It's most common for designers to use Apple products, but you definitely don't have to. But at least a computer. And then you're going to need like software. I use Adobe Creative Suite. It kind of depends what you want to do. If you're going to do like the marketing collateral and like logos and things like that, you probably need the Adobe Creative Suite, because you're going to need Illustrator and InDesign. And that is like $50 a month. But on Cyber Monday, they do a sale. And then lots of times Amazon Prime Week, they do a sale. So you can get it for usually like almost half off or so those weeks. So watch for that and so that'll be for like a whole year. You'll get it for like half off. And then you may need one or two other programs depending on what you like to work in. There's a very popular program called Sketch right now for website design and interface design. Historically, people did that in Photoshop, which comes with Adobe Creative Suite. So it kind of depends what you want to do. But so Creative Suite's like $50 a month, and you get access to literally every program Adobe offers. And then Sketch is, I think it's $99 a year, but their method is that you buy it, you get it for the year, and you can keep it after that without resubscribing. You just don't get any updates. So like, if you're trying to save money, that's an option. And then for both of those, you also probably need some sort of website to promote yourself. Right. With the art, you could probably get away with Etsy, which is free, although their fees are a little high. But with like a design studio, you definitely need somewhere for people to find you, to find information about you, to see samples of your work. But you can still do that relatively inexpensive too. Like you can put together maybe like a Squarespace site or something. And since you're a designer and you've got the skills to do these things, it's your time plus the annual fee, which I think their lowest plan's like $140 a year or something. So that's not too bad. So neither one is too expensive. I would say if you're going to go out on your own, like full time with one of these, you also want just money in the bank. I would say a minimum of 3 months operating expenses, but you'd be better even with 6 months to a year, because the more money you have saved that you can operate on while you're getting these things started, and there will be low points. I'm 18 years into my career, 8 years into this business. I still have weeks and months where it's like crickets, like it just happens. People get busy doing things. They don't want to work on their projects. It's very peaks and valleys. So having that nest egg helps you not freak out, helps you not do something stupid by like taking just a nightmare project and things like that. So definitely good to have that. And then the other thing I'm just realizing I didn't mention, if this is your full-time thing, and if you don't have like a spouse or something that also has a job that takes in insurance, insurance is definitely going to be a big expense every month. That's going to be, depending on your age, a couple $100 a month. So it's not super expensive, and you can keep your expenses like pretty ratcheted down, but it does take a little bit of something. And more than anything, I advise to just have some money in the bank. So very long answer. Sorry.
That's amazing advice, though. I appreciate that so much. So I know we're getting low on time, so I just want to quickly ask a couple more questions. What would you say is realistic for a business to get up and running and profitable so that the teens can prep for that?
Yeah, so I'll be frank, Phoenix Supply Co. still probably isn't what one would call profitable, so I can't all the way speak to that. I keep telling myself that business is one of those things, because like I said, it's really all about eyeballs. It's all about it. eyeballs makes it too simple. It's about relationship too. You know, it's about people finding you, loving you, and then continuously supporting you. But that takes a lot of time. And so I'm convinced it's going to be one of these things where it's like slow growth, slow growth, slow growth. And all of a sudden there's going to be a tipping point where it gets significantly easier. But I'm not to the tipping point yet. So I don't know if I'd call that business super profitable. I think I cover all my expenses and maybe have a little extra. But when you really consider the time you put into all the extra, it's not really profit. It's just offsetting some of my investment of time. But for design, there's really not an exact amount of time. I would say it really depends on the groundwork you've laid before you start. Have you been moonlighting in addition, you know, like while working another job? You're going to have a lot faster success if you're doing that because people know about you and they're referring friends. Your name is out there rather than just starting from nothing. Quite honestly, unless you have no other choice, I wouldn't recommend starting from nothing. I would recommend always doing it in either do it like you walk out of school and you never get a job. This is what you do. Like you never know anything other than the struggle of running your own business. Or you need to work at a job for a while, learn some things, save some money, start doing the work on the side, start growing a small client base on the side. And then it's like, you know, it starts your day job is up here and your freelance is here. And like slowly you do this and then you let that one take over. Yeah. That is definitely the way I recommend doing it. It's the way I did it. I know a lot of other successful designers who've done it that way. Yeah. And in terms of time, if you do it that way, I mean, pending you don't like launch your business in the middle of just an awful economy or something like that, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to have a pretty good first year. I mean, I had a decent first year, I remember. But it's if you laid the groundwork. If you haven't laid the groundwork, it's going to take a couple years, you know, to really like, because it's all about clients. And that just like takes a long time to get your name out there and to have enough people who trust you that they start telling other people. Yeah. I've got clients or contacts or whatever where it's taken 5 years to get a referral. But I can tell you, like, the majority of the people in my life somehow translate to a client at some point in time. It's just a matter of how many years it takes to get there.
So definitely patience and perseverance in an industry where you're self-employed.
Yes, perseverance is probably your number one keyword in any business because it's so hard. It's rewarding in a million different ways that like going to work for somebody else could never be, but it's definitely insanely hard. It's if you think you're going to have it easy working for yourself versus working for somebody else, you are very wrong. It's very hard, but the difference is all the hard you're working, it's all to your benefit and your business's benefit versus somebody else's benefit. So it to me makes the hard a lot more worth it, you know, and ultimately you control what you're going to put up with and not put up with and kind of the overall growth strategy of the business. So
yeah, and I was going to say there's probably a lot more passion behind what you do when it's for yourself and you're making a name for yourself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to do one more question to wrap us up today. I appreciate your time so much, but I want to end with any advice that you have for like-minded teens to know if this could be a good fit for them.
Like I was saying, you need to be somebody who has that perseverance. I feel like that's the number one trait because it does get hard. You're working all kinds of weird hours. There's, especially in the beginning, there's not really off time. You know what I mean? Like you're always working on something, even if it's not a project for like a client or something, you're working on like a business process or like setting up a new piece of software for your own use or whatever. So definitely perseverance. In both of these businesses, you need to clearly have creativity, but even more so than creativity, you have to have like, I want to say business acumen, but I don't think everyone's born with business acumen. You have to have the desire to at least learn the business acumen and to get there, because you can be the most amazing designer or the most amazing artist, but if you have zero business acumen, like you're probably not going to get anywhere. Like you've got to be willing to do the books, send the invoices, have the sales calls, put proposals together. Even with the art stuff, like I get people asking me if I do customs. Well, now I got to figure out what that costs, you know, or I've got to do all the order packing, and like, you don't want to pack an order wrong because now you got to pay shipping twice. And that just ate into your profits. You know, likewise, you hold orders too long. People don't want to order from you anymore because they figure, oh, that took forever to get to me. So you've got, if you do not have the ability to do all that small stuff and do it just as well as you do the creative work, if not better, I actually often tell my clients, I care about the creative thing I'm making you, but I actually care even more about your experience, because I can give you the most amazing thing, but if you hate every second of going through the process with me, it doesn't matter. We will never work together again. It doesn't matter if it makes you tons of money. It doesn't matter if it wins awards for how amazing and clever it is. If you hate every second, you are not coming back to me. You know, like, you're going to just like think awful thoughts about me all day, every day. Like, it's going to be bad. So you've got to be willing to do all that stuff that is not the creative work with the exact same level of intensity and passion and ambition and accuracy as the creative work. And let me tell you, that stuff takes about 50% of the time. Some days and weeks, even more than 50% of the time. Like, it's not a small part of the business, it's a huge part of the business. So you need to know you want to do that. You can handle that. If you can't, like, again, there are books, there are courses, there's coaching, mentoring, you know, all kinds of resources to learn that. Like, most people are not, there are a few, you know, born salesmen or born business people out there, but most people are not born with that, you know, like, you learn it. So you've just got to be willing to learn that. So I think that's probably the number one thing. Like, not only have the creative talent, but you have to have the business talent, or a huge, strong passion and desire to learn it and do it well. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Melissa, for taking some time with us today. I love what you're doing, and I'm going to continue to support you and follow you on Instagram. We'll put some information when I post this video of how people can reach you, and then hopefully they can follow you and see what you're doing, and that will inspire some teens to take that action and to start their own businesses one day and follow in your footsteps. And I'm just so happy for your success and everything that you've accomplished.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
All right. Well, have a wonderful holiday weekend. Thanks so much again.
Thank you. You too.